Hello, my Tubies and my Teletubbies. It's me, Sheila True Love, truly loving you. And I am here today. Let me just put my glasses on so I can see correctly. See, my lip got a blister on it, so I'm putting my, what is this, lip therapy on. I don't know if I'm allergic to some of the lipstick that I was wearing or what is it, but whatever. There we are. There we have it. I am making a video here today because I feel that it's very important. And I just want you to, I have my notes here so I won't be rambling on. And I am in no way making this video to disrespect anyone's religious beliefs or to stress anyone out, especially when it comes to my children. I'm only carrying out what Jehovah and Jesus Christ instructed all of us to do at Ephesians chapter 5, verse 11, Romans chapter 16, verse 17 through 18, 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, and Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. That's all I'm doing. I'm not posting pictures of family members. I'm not doing any of that. I'm totally being respectful and mindful, and I'm hoping they respect my religious beliefs as well. Now, my purpose of making this video, it comes from being a protective and loving parent, along with loving and protecting other people. Now, this is a very serious matter because it involves saving lives. And twisting scriptures to fit a person's narrative is not only dangerous, but it's deadly. And that's something that I'm here to clear up here today. I'm just got home and I just slapped this on, so don't mind me. Now, just recently, a 15-year-old Jehovah's Witness girl was ordered by a judge in the UK, the United Kingdom, to live. They ordered her to live and to receive a blood transfusion. This girl, she suffers from sickle cell anemia. Now, this is a condition that attacks your blood, and many times to save your life or to prevent yourself from having strokes and dying, you have to have a blood transfusion. Now, there's to verify that, I would like for you to check out the video, Blood Transfusions in Sickle Cell Disease. And that's by HCP Live. I'm going to post that anyway in the description so you can check that video out. Now, I want you to listen to why I feel so strongly about the way that I do. And then I want you to give me your feedback and tell me what you think. Now you'll notice the name that I gave this video is Jehovah's Witnesses and the danger of being a part of this organization or part of this group. And my purpose for doing this video is for people not to get caught up in a cult. And after you hear this, tell me how do you feel about this? Would you say that there are some Jehovah's Witnesses that are in a cult and they don't even know it? They don't even realize that they are in a cult? So like I said, my purpose of making this video, it strictly comes from being a very loving parent and protective of my children, along with other people who families may be caught out there. Anyway, I want you to listen to why I feel the way I do. And tell me what you think.
But I wanted to talk about two common sense reasons why Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. Now, to most people, especially in America, they don't really think of Jehovah's Witnesses as a cult. And the reason being, they might have a relative or a coworker or a neighbor who's a Jehovah's Witness, and they see them and they seem like, just regular people. So how could you consider them a cult? Well, when you talk to people about Jehovah's Witnesses and you want them to understand that they are part of a cult, there are only two basic things I think you really need to bring up. Because yes, of course, you could discuss the scholarly work that has been done on cults and explain to people that there are many people in academia that consider Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. But you don't even really need to get into all of that. Very simple, two basic ways to show, two common sense ways to show any person that the Jehovah's Witnesses are in a cult. Number one, any group that asks people to cut off all contact with friends and family simply because they do not believe what that group teaches anymore is using cult technique. Period. And any regular person understands that. The only people who will disagree with that are people in a cult. Because if you're part of any kind of group, political group, religious group, whatever, and you don't agree with the teachings of that group anymore, and because of that, that group says, well, not only are you no longer part of us, but your parents can never talk to you anymore. Your siblings can no longer talk to you anymore. Your friends can no longer talk to you anymore. That's a cult. You don't even have to think too deep about that. And any rational person would acknowledge, yeah, that's a cult. Number two, any group that would ask you to kill yourself because of a very, very questionable doctrine on blood is a cult. I mean, let's think about this literally. Let's say you are a parent and you have a 6-month-old child, and that child is dying. And the only way to save that child is for that child to receive a blood transfusion. If you are part of a group that says, no, you cannot save your child, then you're in a cult. This isn't really too difficult to figure out, to think about, right? If someone is asking you to kill your family member or kill yourself so that you don't break what they believe to be the understanding of a law in the Bible, then they're giving you bad information. And I could get really in depth and discuss why the Jehovah's Witness doctrine on blood is very questionable and why it doesn't really make sense. But if you explain it to any person who's not a Jehovah's Witness, they'll agree with you. They'll say, yeah, that doesn't make sense. It's very cultish. So the next time you talk to someone and you want them to understand that, yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses, that's definitely a cult, and they might be surprised, just bring up those two things. Number one, when you leave, you are no longer allowed to have contact with friends and family who are Jehovah's Witnesses. That's clearly cult behavior. And number two, if you or your family member is dying and a blood transfusion can save your life, and if you take that blood transfusion, you will be kicked out of the group, yeah, that's a cult. You don't even need to think too hard about that. That's common sense. So, it's me, Matt, the regular pioneer.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah, now that makes a lot of sense. That resonates a lot of sense to me. And the reason that Jehovah's Witnesses give for they're not partaking of blood, that is totally debunked after listening to Mark Martin. I mean, it's totally debunked. Listen to why I say so and why I feel so strongly and passionately about this blood transfusion um, situation, and how a lot of the times the Jehovah's Witnesses, they do tend to take scriptures out of context.
Believe that I think is one of the most dangerous doctrines that they teach, and it has to do with blood transfusions. If you're not familiar with this, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, this might be new to you. But for everyone who has been or who is a Jehovah's Witness, they're very familiar with this document, which is the Advanced Medical Directive. They put this in their wallet, and I used to carry one of these. I had it in my wallet, and under any circumstance, if I were in an accident or if something happened and they said you're going to need a blood transfusion to save your life, it was my obligation, especially as an elder in the congregation, to say no blood, even at the cause of death. Now, this, to me, is a complete misapplication of Scripture, and I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why. We're going to look at what the Watchtower says, what the Reasoning Book says, and then we're going to analyze very carefully why it's a bad analogy. The illustration that they use is horrible. But before we get to that, one of the verses that they use to try to support this doctrine of not eating blood is found in Genesis chapter 9. Now, right after Jehovah had given, Noah had come off the ark, and Jehovah had given Noah and his family permission to eat the animals, here's what he says in Genesis chapter 9, verse 4. He says, "Only flesh with its life, its blood you must not eat." So in context, if we look at that, this is talking about animal blood. There's no doubt about it. Jehovah wasn't talking about cannibalism. They weren't going to be eating human blood or people. So in the context of this verse, we can't apply this. It cannot be applied to human blood because cannibalism is not even mentioned here. It's talking about eating animals for food. So one of the things that they would do at that point, if you made that argument to a Jehovah's Witness, is they would take you to the Christian Greek scriptures, or otherwise known as the New Testament, and they would take you to Acts chapter 15. And if I start in verse 28, here's what it says. "For the Holy Spirit and we ourselves have favored adding no further burden to you except these necessary things, to keep abstaining from things sacrificed to idols, from blood, from what is strangled, and from sexual immorality. If you carefully keep yourselves from these things, you will prosper. Good health to you." Now, even in the context here, if you notice in verse 29, it says to keep abstaining from things sacrificed to idols. We're talking about animals. We're not talking about people in this case. It says from blood, from what is strangled. Now, it means not to eat an animal that's been strangled. They have to be properly bled. It's very clear. But you will never win a discussion or even get a witness to realize, not that we're about winning arguments, but you'll never get them to realize that this is not talking about a blood transfusion. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you what the Watchtower, July 1st, and I know this is old, 1951, but I want you to hear this. This still stands today. July 1st, 1951, page 414. Here's what it says. "A patient in the hospital may be fed through the mouth, through the nose, or through the veins. When sugar solutions are given intravenously, it is called intravenous feeding. So the hospital's own terminology recognizes as feeding the process of putting nutrition into one's system via the veins. Hence, the attendant administering the transfusion is feeding the patient through the veins, and the patient receiving it is eating through his veins." So you see what they're saying here? What they're saying is they're eating through the veins. That's what this is talking about. If you receive that saline solution, you're actually eating. I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that at all. But let's keep going. The reasoning from the scriptures, page 73, paragraph 1. It says, "Is a transfusion really the same as eating blood? In a hospital, when a patient cannot eat through his mouth, he is fed intravenously. Now, would a person who never put blood into his mouth, but who accepted blood by transfusion, really be obeying the command to keep abstaining from blood? To use a comparison, consider a man who is told by the doctor that he must abstain from alcohol. Would he be obedient if he quit drinking alcohol, but had it put directly into his veins? Now, at first glance, this might sound reasonable. What happens when you drink alcohol, if you drink a beer or a glass of wine? Now, I got this from just doing a little study on the internet. You can do this. It says alcohol is first absorbed directly through the stomach and intestinal linings into the bloodstream. Then the liver gradually digests it by breaking it down into fatty acids and water. And what happens at that point? It's eliminated either through your urine or through your excrement.
That's right.
It comes out of the body. That's what happens if you drink alcohol. So what happens when blood gets into the stomach? If I drink blood, like we're talking about, actually drinking it, not transfusing it, but drinking it. If blood is eaten, the ingested blood enters the body's digestive system, and the blood will be treated by the body exactly the same as it would treat food. See, just as the food you eat is ingested, the blood will be completely digested and broken down into proteins, and then what happens? It comes out as waste. It comes out either in the urine or the excrement. It's eliminated from the body.
And this is the point that I really appreciated that he was sharing with us. You know, the difference between when you ingest alcohol or if you are to drink blood, literally drink blood, you notice how it's broken down in the body and it's eliminated from the body. Now, listen to and notice when a person takes a blood transfusion and how that transpires. You know, it's totally different. It's not eliminated from the body. Anyway, let's listen further.
But what happens to blood if I put blood into my veins? Is it eliminated? It stays in the veins. It functions as an organ. So this illustration of being fed intravenously, you see, when you're fed intravenously, again, it's got to be eliminated. But when you put blood in the veins, there is no elimination. It stays in the veins. It is an organ. It's no different than having a stomach or a liver or a kidney transplant or a lung transplant or a heart transplant for that matter. Blood is an organ. It is not to be eaten or digested. That's what the Bible's saying. Don't drink blood. Don't eat blood. You see, many years ago, the Romans used to do that from the gladiators and things just to get the power. They thought that if they drank it, they would get the soul of that warrior. And it was a superstition, and it was unhealthy. And God didn't want his people taking any part in that. That he didn't want them eating blood. But putting it in your veins, having a transfusion, is not eating. And somehow the organization justifies dialysis, which, praise God, they do justify that, because so many people would be dead if they didn't do it. But they allow you to have dialysis and remove the blood completely from your body and then put it back in, filtering it. And that's okay, because they say you're not breaking the circuit. But you can't have a blood transfusion, which also would save your life. Their illustration is faulty. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness, please, I'm begging you, think about these things, because they are making you sacrifice your life based on what the Watchtower is teaching and not on what the Bible is saying. This is dangerous, friends. It is really, really dangerous. I can't talk enough about this. Another point that I'd like to make is regarding the using of blood fractions. You know, the society has changed their views on this over the years. Here's the thing. It takes a lot more blood, and I know this has been touched on by other websites. I don't know that they've touched on what I just did with the analogy, but you're using the supply. If I'm using the supply, why can't I put into it? Why can't I donate blood to help do that? Why can't I, the witnesses are terrible about, the organization rather, is terrible about making you scared to get a blood transfusion. Yes, there are certain risks involved, but they are so minuscule. They are so minimal. It's no different than going and getting a cold or getting on a plane and worrying about the plane crashing. The likelihood of that happening is not very high. It's the same with a blood transfusion. The likelihood of you getting some communicable disease or something horrible is not very likely. So they try to scare you into not doing it. And they try to scare you into thinking that if you do it, you're breaking God's law. There is no law in the Bible. And if you found one, please show it to me. If you find one, I'm open. I'm always willing to learn. But if you find something in the Bible that tells me that I cannot have a blood transfusion, it says not to eat blood, but it doesn't say anything about putting it into my veins. The Watchtower is using a faulty illustration. Now they're letting you have platelets or the fractions. I'm sorry, I don't know all of the terminology because I left the organization about 13 years ago, but I know that they've made some adjustments in their light and in their thinking, but they'll let you use the source, but not replenish the source. That's so selfish. That's so selfish. That is not, again, this is not the God that I worship, the God that I know. To take from the supply and not resupply it. The God that I worship wants me to have a hand in helping others and helping to save lives. I hope you really think about this.
And that was some excellent points that he made in terms of, the Jehovah's Witnesses following what they interpret in the Bible regarding why they don't partake of blood. But at the same time, there's another example that I'd like to share with you, and that's at Matthew chapter 12, verse 9 through 14. And this is when Jesus Christ made it very clear that when it comes to saving a life, that you have to sometimes take the law and put the law to the side. Now, we know that in Exodus chapter 35, verse 2, it clearly says that you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. It says, for 6 days, work may be done, but on the seventh day, you shall have a holy day, a Sabbath of complete rest to the Lord. Now, here's the clincher. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. Now, let's take note of how Jesus Christ showed the importance of saving a life. And that's at Matthew chapter 12, verse 9 through 14, where it says, departing from there, he went into the synagogue, and a man was there whose hand was withered. And they questioned Jesus, asking, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might bring charges against Jesus Christ. They was trying to trap him. But he said to them, this is the perfect illustration that Jehovah's Witnesses need to keep in mind when it comes to saving a life. Jesus Christ said, what man is there among you who has a sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable then is a person than a sheep? So then it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So you see how even when it comes to the law, there is a time when the law should be put aside. So then after that, Jesus told this man to stretch out your hand. The man stretched it out, and he was restored to normal, just like the others. But of course, the Pharisees, they went out and they conspired against him so as to how they might be able to destroy him. Now, when it comes to the blood transfusion and being careful that you are not a part of a cult, anytime a religious group or organization tell you to kill yourself or kill your children, would you say that this is a group that has God's backing and support? Anytime a group tell people to cut off all contact with their friends and their family simply because they do not believe what the group is teaching anymore. And when I say that, I'm mainly talking about, let's just say hypothetically speaking, someone hands in their disassociation letter. They weren't disfellowship. They merely handed in their disassociation letter. Okay? Why is it that they still have to be cut off and cut all ties with their family members simply because they choose to join another Bible study group, or simply because they no longer believe in what this organization is teaching? They don't believe in their interpretation about things. They just handed in their disassociation letter. They found another Bible study group that they felt was more um, in harmony with Jesus Christ's teachings. At the same time, they will be cut off from their family members and from their what they thought were friends. Now, most people understand and can see that this is a cult type practice. And the only ones who can't see this are people who are in a cult. And when I think about this, to be honest with you, I think about the cult leader, Jimmy Jones. He was interested in building a new society. And in the process, he actually, let me get my pages together here, he actually convinced hundreds of people to kill themselves and their families. There's a video that I'd like for you to check out. It's called Jamestown Mass Suicide, Revisiting the Cult That End with the Deaths of 900. And that's by Today. There have been several other cults that have proven to be deadly and dangerous. Not just the people who are part of the Jehovah's Witness organization and may not be aware that they are a part of a cult. They're telling you to kill yourself, just like Jimmy Jones did. They're telling you to kill your family members and let your children die, just like Jimmy Jones did. And what about, okay, so that was Jamestown. That was November 18th, 1978. What about the Manson family? That was 1967 through 1969. And then you have the Branch Davidians, and that's DAVIDIANS. That was from 1959 through 1993. Then there's the other cult called Heaven's Gate. And then what about Warren Jeff's Fundamentalist Church? That was formed in 2006. You know? These are very, very deadly cults, which is the reason why I'm just telling the people out there to be very, very careful when it comes to being a part of an organization that is telling you to cut off your family members, cut off your your friends, and to be willing to sacrifice your life and to allow your children to die because of their doctrine that they are taken totally out of context. And that is the main reason why I'm making this video. You notice that I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm not calling them out of their name. I am not trying to stress out my children or what have you, but like I said, we are commissioned. All of us are commissioned by Jehovah God and Jesus Christ, which I already gave you the scriptures at Ephesians 5:11, Romans 16:17 through 18, 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, and Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. And the only thing I'd like to say in closing is please, please wake up. I love you. And this is Sheila True Love, truly loving you always. Until next time, I'll see you on the other side. Bye for now.